Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Tech Showdown. Today, I'm starting a new series where I interview other tech YouTubers. And to start the series off, I am joined by Wendell the Wise. How are you doing, Wendell?
How's it going?
So, I haven't come up with a name for this series yet. I've been talking to a few people about it, but I'm not really sure. But the idea is that we just have a nice, fun chat with different tech YouTubers and just talk about their channels, a bit about their personal lives, what they're into, who they like to watch, and just things like that. And I thought Wendell would be a great person to start with because obviously a lot of you guys know him. So on that note, Wendell, so for maybe the people out there that live under a rock, they don't know who you are. Can you explain sort of what you do, what your channel is, what you're all about?
It's youtube.com/level1, the number one, level one text, TECHS. And it's sort of a fun, interesting diversion. Level one is really a hobby for me and the other people that are involved. But it's hobby's not really a fair description. It's sort of like a hobby plus plus. I don't know. You ever meet anybody that is like, super, like as soon as work is over, they're like, yeah, super hobby, let's go. I've actually got a little bit of bleed over between my hobby and sort of my chosen career path. So it's hard to tell the difference between the two sometimes.
Yeah, because you're not a full-time YouTuber. Your Level 1 Techs is not your primary occupation.
No, well, I do consulting, and so the unglamorous way to describe it is that I'm a computer janitor. Uh, that's really, I mean, it's a computer janitor for large-ish companies, well,
Yeah.
large and medium companies, really. And most of the time, the people involved know everything that they need to know to solve their own problem. They just need to get somebody in there in the mess with a plunger that's like, all right, it's cool, the toilet's overflowing. It's cool that there's crap everywhere.
Yeah.
We're just going to put on our waders. We're just going to get in there. We're going to take care of it, and it's great. Because sometimes you need that in an organization. Sometimes you need that. And so some of those hard-won life lessons are in level one. And some of it's just us goofing off with hardware because it's like, wow, this new thing in hardware came out. I really want to play with it. And I think before level one, I was probably doing that not in front of a camera anyway. And sometimes with technology, people will invent technology and they have no idea how to market it and they have no idea how cool it is. So like Intel, for example, with Optane. Optane is a really cool piece of technology. They have absolutely fumbled the marketing campaign. Like the marketing people involved with Optane just have no idea what they're doing and they're just fumbling around. And it's sad because it's such a cool piece of technology, but they're literally building products that no one will buy except the data center. And the data center is like freaking out because it's so good. But again, the data center doesn't really know because the data center people always get told things. And then when you actually buy it and how it actually works is completely different than how you were told it works on paper. So
Yeah.
there's some healthy skepticism with Optane as there was with SSDs. I mean, the data center didn't adopt SSDs for operations on servers until a long time after SSDs were mainstream because it's like we don't understand this technology. It might blow up and take our data with it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, let's start with the first question then, and let's go back to take a nice step back. And so where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? How did you get into tech? Did you go to college or university to study something in IT? So how did that all go down?
It's I grew up in a very rural place, like farmland, farm equipment, coal mines, rural, definitely a very rural places. I mean, if you can imagine a population density of like 15 or 20 or 25 people per square mile,
Wow.
definitely that.
Okay.
Yeah, so not really a lot of people. A lot of people, a lot of very smart people, but they sort of use their intelligence to like build contraptions to solve problems, or a lot of people doing practical jobs like fixing lawnmowers, doing mechanical things, fixing cars.
Hmm.
Not really a lot of what I would call white collar stuff. And so not a lot of like traditional education or anything that sort of went with that. I sort of decided that I wanted to go to university, so I did. But I had to work my way through school, so it was sort of juggling school and working was tricky. But hey, early start on my career, I knew I wanted to do stuff with computers well, I knew I wanted to do stuff with technology
Yeah.
from a very early age, and it didn't really focus on computers until I had programming classes in computer science at university. I did pretty well with math and physics and that sort of thing, and there was like an accelerator program and some other stuff, and so I got sucked into college classes pretty early, and then I did more college classes, and then I took all of the computer science classes that the university offered, which was enough for two majors, but you can't get a double major in the same thing because it's just two variances of the same major,
Yeah.
even though you have like a zillion hours. So I ended up minoring in physics instead, which is a lot of fun. So I have a computer science degree with a minor in physics, and that worked out pretty good. Although the stuff that you learn from the computer science degree is really, I don't think that I would have retained as much from it if I was not also working through school at the same time. Because I feel like a lot of the people that I went to school with that were not working didn't really get as much out of the education because there wasn't like a context to learn it in. And so I
Yeah.
pretty much have always worked in like if I wasn't like fixing appliances, like let's help figure out what's wrong with the dishwasher, or let's help figure out what's wrong with the farm equipment, or let's help figure out what's wrong with this thing. It was let's goof around with this ancient computer that should have been thrown away like 20 years ago. So any encouragement that I could offer anybody reading this or listening to this is definitely tinker, definitely encourage your curiosity, definitely do whatever you can to figure out how stuff works. Don't be content. Don't beat that curiosity down and it's like, no, I don't want to be curious, but I don't want to get the screwdriver. I don't want to get my hands dirty. No, get your hands dirty and get in there and figure stuff out. It'll be a lot of fun. There's a joy in figuring things out that you get addicted to it, and then it's like, ooh, there's a puzzle. I have to solve the puzzle, and then after that, it's irrelevant.
Yeah. So when you finished, so what did you actually end up getting when you finished university? A computer science qualification.
It's a bachelor's degree, so I have a bachelor's
Okay.
degree in computer science, and then I guess it's just they put like a thing on there that's like a minor in physics, but
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So once you got your bachelor's, did you then get a tech support job, or how did you progress from there?
No, no, it was sort of a weird story. So I was looking going to graduate school. I did a project in college that was turned out to be really good, and um, there was sort of a nationwide thing, and the competition turned out pretty good. And then some other universities were like, "Hey, you going anywhere for grad school? You want to go here for grad school?" So I looked at the University of Washington in Seattle. I spent a couple months in Seattle actually, and I thought that University of Washington would be a lot of fun. It would be really, really good. But I decided ultimately not to pursue a graduate degree. One of the things that I was working on in college sort of spun off into a piece of software. And so I sold the piece of software instead of going to college, and just sort of took a year or so to tinker around with technology and sort of figure out what it was I wanted to do. And that was what sort of got me sucked back into consulting, supporting the software and also supporting other enterprises doing things like that, and sort of putting a team together to do software projects and take care of things and that sort of thing. So it's sort of, and then, local, getting sucked into, the local, it's like, you're the guy that we'll bring stuff to. And so, growing up, it was people would bring their lawnmowers to like the lawnmower guy to work on, or bring their car to like the car guy to work on. And it was sort of a community thing.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of turned out like that with computers as well, because I live in a more metropolitan area than I did, but it's still kind of rural, and so it's still like, yeah, it's like you're the guy to help us figure out our stuff. So I do that basically.
Okay.
Well, I don't, but I know people that do, and I sort of keep
Yeah.
an eye on them.
Yeah, no, that sounds cool. So, in between that and level one techs, how did you get into YouTube, and how did all that happen?
Well, it's sort of a long and complicated story, but I got sucked into some support projects and things like that. I mean, I think everybody knows about Tech Syndicate by now. So that was another channel that another guy named Logan and I started, and that was okay. That sort of lived out whatever it was going to be, and I sort of continued on. With level one after that, and level one for me was really, it was sort of a community thing. And so I decided ultimately not to pursue a graduate degree. I wanted to do stuff with technology, and so I decided ultimately not to pursue a graduate degree. I decided ultimately not to pursue a graduate degree. And level one for me was really, just sort of a community more than anything. It was a community of sort of like-minded individuals that was like, hey, we want to work in the field, or we are working in the field, and we want to offer things like how to, help people get their stuff fixed, basically do the janitorial stuff, because there's not really a lot of that out there. A lot of the people that are into open source sort of resonate with the help everyone message, but we're not exclusively open source. I use Windows, I use Mac OS, I use Linux. I definitely like and prefer Linux. Windows and Mac OS do some really dumb and annoying things, but we're a pretty inclusive community, I think. And certainly there are some people that in the community that are like, oh my gosh, you're using Mac OS, but we try not to encourage that. For me, level 1 is about doing interesting stuff with technology and technology commentary and technology policy, because we're entering an era where technology decisions affect literally everybody. Like, technology is pervasive, and very, very few people understand technology, and worse yet, the people that are making policy around technology understand it, I would say, less than average. Less than your average citizen. And I think that's very disenfranchising for your average citizen, the global citizen. I'm not just talking about the U.S. I think that people have gotten it dramatically wrong on every continent on Earth. And I think that it's up to the people like us that are sort of in the know to make sure that we architect systems with technology that cannot be used to subvert the population.
Yeah. So on that note, level 1 now level 1 techs is quite established. You've been doing it for a while now. What are your favorite things as a tech YouTuber, and what's your least favorite thing about it?
I think my favorite thing is the joy of watching other people figure stuff out. And so you can lay it out and you can put it in a video, but the people that are taking time to go through the video and understand the technology products, or understand the software stack, or understand what it is very, very cool to sort of live vicariously through those other people's eyes. And so, like, on the forum, when somebody posts and has a question and has trouble figuring it out, or when we're working on new cool stuff, it is so exciting to see that development, and see, there are a lot of members of the community that have been members of the community for many years, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them were students, or some of them are students, or maybe early in their career, maybe sort of later in their student path, and they're asking questions in the forum, and I'm answering questions, and other people in the forum are answering questions, and it's been really awesome to see their careers develop as students, because I think that they probably wouldn't have gotten as much insight into a lot of stuff if it wasn't for the community coming together and just being awesome. And really, I'm just a catalyst, a small catalyst for that, because it's like, hey guys, what about this, and what about this technology? Let's do a video on that. And so that's sort of the most fun. The least fun's probably unsolicited hugs.
Really? Out of all the things.
No, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's because, I want to get to a point where I have more time to work on level 1 and some technology stuff in general. And I think we'll talk a little bit about that more later, because I think that ends up being a pretty good answer to one of your later questions. Yeah. But in terms of there's not really, for me, there's not really a downside. I think that if YouTube were the only thing that I did, I think that I would wake up a lot of the time in a cold sweat, because Google is arbitrary, and what's the term for the Greek gods? They're quick to anger, and they're arbitrary, and I can't remember that. Something like that. And so that's like Google, and it's like, oh, guess what? You're demonetized, or guess what? We're not going to feature your stuff anymore. And it's like, there's no explanation. Why does this work? Yeah. Google is pretty good as or YouTube is pretty good as a discovery platform. Other people can discover your stuff. But something I've noticed from being on YouTube for, not making videos, but just watching it over the last 10 years, is that the algorithm has gotten to be not very good for discovery. So like when I just sit down at my computer and it's like I'm just going to browse and click random videos on YouTube, it does a terrible job at figuring out what I would actually be interested in, but it does an amazing job at figuring out what sort of clickbait I will click on.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, then, talking about YouTube, what YouTubers do you like to watch? You know, are there certain ones that are your go-tos, and what kind of content is your favorite to consume on YouTube, you know, tech-wise and otherwise?
I probably watch more tech YouTube than I should, just because I'm curious what everybody else is up to. I don't really have a crazy amount of time for that. I've watched a lot of your stuff. I thought that you know, a lot of your coverage is pretty good, and I think we've done some stuff together in the past, and I've done some stuff with Brian and some other channels, and so that kind of stuff is a lot of fun and exciting because you get that cross pollination. I mean, everybody, you know, the audience have those YouTubers that they gravitate toward, and this is not really a zero sum game. It's like everybody can sort of do their own thing, but I feel like that everybody is working toward a better experience with technology overall, and whether that's benchmarking or showing stuff or talking about crazy stuff that vendors are trying to pawn off on the unsuspecting public. Because again, it's like it's, you know, the whole Spider-Man thing, with great power comes great responsibility. And so as tech YouTubers or whatever, it's like, you know, because you guys are in the know, you have a responsibility to protect people from, you know, what might be lurking that they don't realize.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I think with that, there is the obligation that you don't always have to go with the grain. I mean, I've had a lot of videos that have attracted vast criticism because I've done a negative review of something that's otherwise been positively reviewed. And I don't mind that, because I think, especially when it comes to things like peripherals, but for most tech in general, it is still our opinion most of the time, and we all have different opinions. Even on positive reviews, you'll see differences between positive reviews in terms of what they think is the biggest, you know, pro of a certain product. And I think that that difference is good. You don't want to, you know, even if you're a big fan of a company, you don't want all your tech reviewers saying the same thing unless it's just a very obvious thing. But
yeah,
you know, you want that difference of opinion. You want to hear different people's perspectives on it, because that's what's important, and that's what's going to actually give you the best advice as a consumer when you hear all these different opinions, especially ones that maybe sometimes go against the grain. So there's things like that. But on the front of favorites and things like that, I know you're going to really enjoy this question, Wendell. So what is your favorite CPU and your favorite GPU of all time, in terms of when you think back on it now? What was like the CPU that when it came out, or when you bought it, or when you were using it, you were like, man, I just love this thing? And the same for GPUs. They don't need to be from the same time period. It can be completely two different times. But what are your all-time favorites?
I don't know. That's such a tough question. The first time that I would say, because I really like technology, but I wouldn't say that there's ever been a point in my life where I've been like super giddy about technology. Okay. But there is one notable exception, and it is around sort of a CPU upgrade. So there was this weird sequence of events where there was like somebody else in the dorm, and we went to a computer show, which is like, computer show used to be like this thing where it was like a traveling Newegg, basically. This is going way back. And so like all of these vendors would travel together to like a major metropolitan area, and it'd be like Saturday, you know, come get your computer parts. And they'd usually do this about 2 or 3 months after like a new CPU or some other new thing came out. And I knew a guy that he got a Celeron 300, and the Celeron 300, it was not bad, but it was not great. It was, and I had like a Pentium 233 or something like that, like the old school. Yeah. And it was like, you know, maybe this is not bad, but he overclocked it from, you know, 300 megahertz to 450 megahertz by going from like 66 to 100 megahertz on the front side bus. And it was like, holy crap, this is pretty cool. Some things it was good for, some things it was bad because it didn't have cache. And there was a computer show that was coming up, and it was like, oh, I should go to the computer show and see if I can work something out, because I'd been working for a local computer shop, and somehow I ended up with a server motherboard that like needed to be RMA'd, or there was something really minor wrong with it, like one of the PCI slots, and they were like, it's garbage, you can have it. Or maybe it was blown fuse, because I was really good at replacing surface mount fuses by soldering at that point, and they were like, oh, the PS2 ports don't work, it's garbage, you can have it. And then I would just replace the fuses. I don't know. Somehow I ended up with the server motherboard, and it was like, I could probably get a Celeron 300 for this, and this would be a pretty nice little, second system to use Linux on or whatever. Because I didn't, I don't know. Ended up getting a Celeron, or I ended up getting two Celeron 300As, and doing the mod so that you could run two Celeron 300As on this motherboard, and it was like I had died and gone to heaven. Like I couldn't believe how fast it was. Like it was mind blowing, and I was like, is this how 2-slot systems are? This is crazy. And I never. Like from then on, after that, I got an ultra wide SCSI hard drive, replacing an IDE hard drive, and it was like I just used a server as my desktop computer from like that point until now.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and as far as the GPUs go, is there any graphics card that comes to mind? Oh, okay.
Recognize that? That is the 3DFX Voodoo 2. Like, this is probably the other time that I was giddy. This is the 8 meg version, and this it was. I didn't believe that it would be that good. And then somebody I knew got one, and it was like, I'm not really super into games, but I have to have that.
Yeah. Oh, fair enough. So, glad you enjoyed it.
Was it? Did you have one? Was it not good?
No, I don't think I did actually. But,
I was into Quake, and so like Quake was just unbelievable on that thing.
Back then. Yeah.
So.
No, well, that's interesting then. I mean, my ones personally would have been a lot more recent. I would say, CPU wise, would be Sandy Bridge for me. I mean, I had a 2600K, and I just thought at the time, like, wow.
That is an amazing CPU still. I mean, especially if you overclock it.
It's still fantastic. Yeah. So that was really good. And GPU-wise, it would be the AMD R9 290s, just because that's what launched my channel. It was a very good GPU at the time, value for money-wise. I mean, it was pretty phenomenal. They came with a, just horrendous reference cooler, but it gave it a certain charm to me in the sense of, like everyone for ages used to talk about GPU temps, and like, oh wow, my GPU went to 80 degrees Celsius. Is it going to blow up? This is like a nuclear reactor. And then you had the R9 290, which it would just run at 95 degrees Celsius all the time while you were gaming. Like it would just sit at 95, and then suddenly everyone was like, wow. And so yeah,
is that normal?
yeah, and I mean it was loud too. I mean, people would come in the room and think like, "Wow, is that a jet engine? Is someone running a vacuum?" It's just so loud. So that was just a fun one for me. I know they had the same similar type of reference cooler on the 7970 and that, but just the 290 at the time and at the community response to it, I just thought it just was a really funny time period for me anyways. And on the topic of community, what do you think is the biggest or one of the biggest issues right now with the tech community as a whole, and more specifically the tech reviewers, people like you and me and all the other ones out there? What do you think are some of the biggest issues?
I think I'm always thinking about all the computers, or almost all the computers that I've had until very recently, they were good, but a lot of it was like cast off used parts, things like that. And I still work with students. I'll teach a lab every now and again. Yep. And sometimes I'll help students with their employment or whatever. And they usually don't have much. And so it's like, let me help you build a machine, or let me help you with this. And it's like, why do you think we're picking these parts? Well, what about this? This is cast off enterprise stuff. And so I've helped a lot of those students build E5 2650 machines, or E5 2670 machines, and cast offs and things like that. And so I think that as tech reviewers, we should not lose sight of the fact that there are a lot of people in the audience that are building mid-range. There's not a lot of people building at the high end. There's not a lot of people building super custom loop, crazy water cool, insanity. There are a lot of people out there that are doing that. There are a lot of people, I think, in our audience that have the means to do that, but just are sort of disinterested, because we've done obscure videos on, like, here is old enterprise hardware that was tens of thousands of dollars when it was new, that you can get on eBay for $1,000 or $1,500, and here's how you can make use of it in your home lab. And so we've had tons of people do that, much to my surprise, in the forum and things like that. But in terms of, like, it's really value for dollar, and I think we've got to be careful as reviewers that you always get the value per dollar. I think we've also got, I mean, really, to put it more succinctly, we've got to be careful that we don't end up in a situation where the tail is wagging the dog. The marketing companies and the marketing people have their own idea of how they're going to market a product. And certainly the last 3 or 4 years since Sandy Bridge, I think, my experience is that a lot of the marketing people are becoming more and more disconnected from reality.
Yeah.
And like with the AMD Ryzen stuff, it's phenomenal, groundbreaking, mind blowing. It's amazing. But a lot of the people in the marketing departments are like, well, it's really only like a 1 or 3% difference, or it's 1 or 3% slower or whatever. And it's like, dude, you mean to tell me that, a couple of guys with like a water cooler budget were able to upend the multi-billion-dollar, almost $1 trillion juggernaut that is Intel? I mean, that just seems like something you would sing from the rooftops, because it is definitely David versus Goliath in this. In terms of like silicon savings and the enterprise and I/O, I mean, Intel has got this, like, Intel's got, they got their Xeon, and it's like, we need lots of memory because enterprise needs lots of memory. And Intel's like, well, we're not going to give you lots of memory, but we're going to give you this Optane thing that sits between lots of memory and your CPU. And you'll have 3 things that you buy now, and we will control 2 of the 3 things, Optane and the CPU. And that will be really good. And it's like, guys, what? Yeah, let's just... Come on, let's just, some marketing person came up with that. Let's just dial it back here a little bit. Let's just crunch our numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that. You've seen, I mean, as a very recent one to talk about, the Dyson vacuum cleaner sort of fiasco shows exactly the point that you were making, that disconnect.
I wasn't even thinking about that, but yeah.
But the disconnect between the marketing departments and the tech YouTubers, in the sense of, and I'm not blaming this. This really wasn't the fault of the YouTubers involved in this, because they were probably all contracted to make their video about the vacuum cleaner, but they weren't aware. I'm just guessing here, but I would say that they weren't aware that Dyson had also contacted other major YouTubers, and that they would all be putting their videos up at the same time. So what you had was 10 videos all of a sudden come up on certain people's subscription feeds, all of these Dyson vacuum cleaner videos all together, all at the same time. And that was just a total disconnect, because I mean, people aren't going to watch that many. That was just a shocker. So I think, maybe the viewers might still not have enjoyed it, even if they put them up sort of at different times. But I think the idea to put them all up at the same time was, not very good. And I do agree. The other thing I would say, to play devil's advocate to your point, I personally downgraded my personal rig down to one more in line, I felt, with the average user. Going from a 1950X, I dropped down to an 8700K. So from a 16 core to a 6 core. And my cooler as well, from a 280 millimeter liquid cooler down to a 120 millimeter air cooler, to try sort of be more in line. But a lot of people said to me, like, a lot of them, even though they can't afford it, they like watching the high-end stuff. It's sort of like, if you're into cars and you watch a car show, you might not ever be able to afford a Lamborghini or something, but you still like to watch the reviews of it, because it's cool to see the very, very top high-end stuff. So even though they may not be able to afford something like an 1950X or a 1080 Ti, there's still the appeal of watching it, because they want to see, it's a sort of like the dream, would I ever be able to actually get it? So I do see both sides of it, and I think some tech reviewers have lost touch, and I think it's good to bounce backwards and forwards, go down to the budget stuff, then do some mid-range stuff, and you just have to have a nice balance, rather than exclusively checking out the very high-end stuff, even though, you know, it might appeal the most to us because we can run that stuff, you know, because we are tech YouTubers, and so it appeals to us. We like running the super high-end stuff because it's fun, you know. Obviously, you made a lot of videos when Threadripper came out. You quite enjoyed that, as far as I was aware. And
yeah.
and so that stuff is very interesting, but yeah, you have to make that mix, and I think that is a disconnect there. But on the topic, as I brought up my personal rig, let's talk about yours. So what is your current personal rig? What are the specs? And what peripherals are you running in terms of, you know, mouse, keyboard, monitor, headset, all that kind of stuff?
I'm still putting it together. It's not quite done yet, but it's a Threadripper 1950X system with it's got 128 gigs of G.Skill memory.
Wow.
It has a little bit of problem with 128 gig because it's fully populated.
Yeah.
So I'm running a 32 gig kit in it right now for testing. I have the 500 gig Optane 900p and a 1 terabyte Samsung 960 Pro.
Yep.
I've got the Sapphire 5 or Vega 64, the really crazy one that's like 3 slots.
Okay.
In it right now. Although I'll probably swap back to something else. And a GTX 1080 for virtualization pass through, and it's on the ASRock Fatality with the 10 gigabit NIC in a Corsair Carbide 400C with like a Seasonic 1000 watt power supply.
That's a fantastic motherboard. The ASRock X399 Fatality. That's the Tai Chi, isn't it? It's they're two different. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
I tested the Tai Chi, so I didn't test the Fatality, but the Tai Chi was fantastic. I was really impressed by it.
It's the Tai Chi with 10 gig Ethernet, basically.
Oh, okay.
It's almost the same board layout. I think, the best I can recall.
Yeah.
But it was a super impressive board. Honestly, I don't know if I would have gone with it or the Designaire. I probably would have gone with the Designaire if it had built-in 10 gig Ethernet. Because the Designaire was also a really nice board from Gigabyte. And I think the Gigabyte also, it had some weird problem with I ended up trying the 128 gig kit on the Gigabyte, the Asus, and the ASRock. And on the Asus, the Zenith, the ROG Zenith Extreme, that one comes with 10 gig, and the Designaire, both of those had problems with the G.Skill 128 gig kit for whatever reason. So I don't know. For the mouse, I'm using an MX Master, but for the keyboard, I'm using an IBM Model M, and it's just out of reach from the computer that I'm sitting at now, or I would reach and grab it and click it. But it is. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to go do that.
Okay. If you guys are wondering what I'm running, got the Ducky Secret Mouse and the good old Razer Black Widow. Cherry Mix Blues.
I'm back.
Oh, good.
So this.
Wow.
Oh, it's glorious. Yeah, mechanical buckling spring. This one is from the 13th of April, 1988.
Wow. You had that. Did you buy it brand new?
No.
Okay.
I wish. It's also the Space Saver version. It's just there's something about that key, the buckling spring keys. It's just it's better than Cherry MX, better than Alps.
Yeah.
Better than anything really. I love that keyboard. I wish that it had a Windows key or Meta key or whatever you want to call it, but it doesn't.
Oh, fair enough then. And what monitor are you running?
Right now I've got two 4K crossover 32-inch 4K monitors with a crossover ultra wide on top. So it's two 32 4Ks, and then there's a 3440 by 1440 ultra wide on top.
What brands are they? What models?
Everything is crossover. It's like a Korean import.
Yeah.
I think it's 324KS.
Okay.
Yeah, 324KS.
Oh, I've never heard of it before. Is that I've never even heard of it here in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's the Korean monitors, man. I can't get enough Korean monitors. They're a
Okay.
little scratch and dent. They're not like uh they're not perfect, shall we say. There might
Okay.
be a stuck pixel, or
Yeah.
the backlight might not be perfectly even, but they are really inexpensive.
Okay.
Um well, I mean, relative to other ones. So like the crossover ultra wide, I think is the same panel that's in like the LG, like the $1,100 LG from. It's probably not $1,100 now, but it was $1,100. It was like I can get the same panel in a crossover for like $500, or I can pay $1,100 for the LG panel, and it's like I'll go with the crossover. And the
Right.
crossover is definitely like the LG is going to be like flawless, and the backlight's going to be perfect. And if it's not, you should return it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't care because
Okay.
$500.
Oh, fair enough then. So, outside of tech and YouTube and your consultancy, what are your main hobbies or interests that you have, sort of outside of the whole PC thing?
It doesn't. It doesn't really leave a lot of time for
Okay.
things. I've got a couple bonsai trees, and that's okay. And I've since doing the whole level 1 thing, I've tried to improve photography, like photography skills, and like
Hmm.
just messing with the camera. And so if I do have a few free moments, or I want to sort of think about something else, I'll try to use the camera better. And I think that shows a lot, especially compared to my earlier stuff, because I didn't really get a lot of a lot of instruction on how that is supposed to work, and it's not something that I've ever really even been curious about before. And so I've put a lot of work into try to improve that. And so I'd say that has become a little bit of a hobby. That's probably the only really non-technical things that I do. It's like I told you before we started the interview. I'm not a
Yeah.
terribly interesting person, but I am super into technology. I'm a nerd's nerd, and I know that, and that's okay.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, there's plenty of people like me that find you very interesting because of your vast knowledge in that. So that I think you still are very interesting to a lot of people out there. But as our final question, as we're wrapping this up now, what, when do you think was the golden age of tech? Is there a time period where you thought, like this is the best it's going to be? You can interpret golden age however you like. Is there a time period where you thought this was really good, better than, or you think it's yet to come?
I think there are maybe I would think there's probably like two possible answers. And one of them is the golden age was probably sometime after like BBSs were popular, and that when the internet was sort of new in its infancy,
Yeah.
because the people that were super into that could sort of connect with one another, and there wasn't really a lot of trolling. There wasn't really a lot of spam or anything like that. I mean, before the the World Wide Web and things like that, there were message boards. There were things like Usenet for exchanging messages, and all sorts of that. And that has pretty much all been lost because everybody uses the internet ubiquitously now.
Yeah.
And I think that the golden age was not having to deal with the cognitive load of all of the noise. Like the great thing about using the technology, for me, I think I would define the golden age of technology lowers the cognitive load that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis to make your life simpler and easier, and you can spend more time learning and doing stuff, and being excited about things.
Hmm.
And I have to be careful of that myself, because you can get in a loop where technology is the thing that you're discovering and you're being interested by, that kind of thing. But I have to be very careful to not lose sight of the fact that just learning about the technology is not enough. It's not a complete loop. It's not a closed loop. It's not a complete circle. It's you have to do something with the technology. And so in that sense, I think that there's probably a golden age still coming. And I hope that I get to see it. I hope that I get time to do some programming on it, because I have some ideas about how it might come about. And it has to do with a little bit with automation, and a little bit with artificial intelligence, and a little bit with taking the cognitive load off of a person without asking the person to really give up any privacy, or any personal information, or do anything that they're uncomfortable with. I think that we can. I think we have the hardware at this point. We have the signal processors. We have the AI on a chip, we have the low power everything to perfectly manage an individual's credentials, which means that we could do perfect or near perfect security. Just the security issues end up being matters of implementation, not matters of algorithm. And I think that we can get to a point where, I could have a personal assistant that's like, hey, Bob, I'm going to call it Bob because Microsoft Bob, which is the most abhorrent personal assistant that there has been yet.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Bob, why don't you keep an eye on Amazon and let me know if you see this product or this product, go below a minimum threshold. And there's tons of stuff out there to do that already, but you have to know like what the individual tools are and you have to put it together. Most people just want a natural language interface for that. And so like the mouse became a standard GUI tool. There's going to be someone that's going to invent some kind of a standard interface beyond, just a voice. You just talk to it and tell it what you want. As we've seen, Siri is as dumb as a post. And, honestly, Google's assistant is not much better. It's a little better, but it's not much better. And I'm not really super comfortable with Google doing all of its stuff. I want to see the AI running on local hardware, and I want to know all of the points where the AI is talking to APIs. And I think that will probably usher in a golden age for humanity, because at that point, average people will be able to leverage the power of the machinery to solve whatever problem it is that they're interested in. Technology becomes not an end unto itself, but a tool to use in other disciplines, because we've seen how AI is applied to tons of other industries that have nothing to do with computer science right now, just because of TensorFlow. And there's a couple people that can tinker around with TensorFlow, and then all of a sudden they're making music or they're doing whatever. And granted, right now the music is crappy, but that won't always be true. And I think that with these kinds of tools, we will have a golden age of computer science where the technology becomes ubiquitous, but also not super invasive. And it's not, these are just because algorithms haven't been invented yet. I mean, there was a time when you couldn't get on the internet without a mainframe. And, having a mainframe at everybody's house obviously doesn't make any sense. But the problem, it's not that somebody engineered the problem away. It's just that the environment became such that the problem was no longer relevant. And I think that we'll see that in the not too distant future.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's definitely thought-provoking for a final question. I think that's going to leave a lot of people out there. There's a lot to think about. So I want to thank
Anybody want to work on that? Join us in the forums on Level 1 Next.
Yeah, head over and check them out. So yeah, guys, I'll leave the link to Wendell's channel in the description down below. I want to thank you, Wendell, for doing this with me. Thank you so much. It's been really fun, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section down below if you have any, join in the discussion with what Wendell's saying, some of the things. But also let me know what do you think would be a good name for this series? Because going forward, I have other tech YouTubers that I'm going to interview, and I've been trying to think up a good name for it, but I want to kick it to you guys and, see what you guys can come up with. So I thank you guys all for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Sorry, I get rambly.